He was a millionaire who had it all, but fate led him to meet a single mother he barely knew. What happened next? A love story so unexpected it defied all odds. The morning was particularly chilly in Asheville when William Thompson decided to take his first walk through the town. The businessman, accustomed to the frenetic pace of Chicago, was still adjusting to the silence of the mountains. His footsteps echoed on the cobblestone streets as he observed the European-style houses, so different from the skyscrapers he had left behind. Dressed in a simple coat and sunglasses, no one could have guessed that this ordinary-looking man was the famous creator of the software that had revolutionized the Brazilian business market. His decision to retreat to this tourist town hadn't been easy. After Richard, his partner and friend of 2 decades, sold confidential company information to competitors, William realized he needed to step away. The incident had shaken not only his business, but more importantly, his ability to trust people. The sensationalist headlines and constant media speculation suffocated him. Even his past relationships seemed to have been built on interests and appearances. His last girlfriend, a well-known socialite, didn't hesitate to give interviews exposing details of his private life after their breakup. As he walked down Main Street, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee caught his attention. Following the irresistible scent, he found a small coffee shop with a rustic facade. A carved wooden sign announced, "Village Coffee House, since 1962. The large windows allowed a view of the activity inside, and something about the cozy atmosphere drew him in. As he pushed the door open, a delicate bell announced his arrival. The interior was even more charming than the facade suggested. Solid wood tables filled the space harmoniously, and on the walls were old photographs of the town in simple frames. Behind the counter, a woman in her 30s was arranging cups while chatting animatedly with customers. "Good morning. First time here." The melodious voice caught him by surprise. The woman smiled genuinely, her brown eyes conveying a serenity he hadn't seen in a long time. William took a few seconds to respond, mesmerized by the simplicity of the moment. "Yes, I just moved to town," he replied, choosing a table near the window. The morning light streamed in softly, creating a cozy ambiance. "Then welcome. I'm Emily, the owner. Can I suggest our house special coffee? It comes with a cheese bread that's my grandmother's recipe." Before William could respond, a small whirlwind of energy burst into the coffee shop. "Mom, look what I made in art class!" A boy of about 7 ran up to Emily, holding a colorful drawing. His eyes sparkled with pride as he showed off his work. "That's beautiful, Liam. But what did we agree about running inside the cafe?" Emily tried to keep a serious expression, but the smile on her lips gave her away. "Sorry, Mom," the boy replied, slowing down but keeping his enthusiasm. It was then that he noticed William. "Hi, you're new here, right? Everyone knows everyone in Asheville." The child's spontaneity caught William off guard. In Chicago, his interactions were always calculated, with people carefully measuring their words in the presence of the powerful businessman. Here, in that moment, he was just another customer having coffee. "Liam, don't bother the customers," Emily gently warned, but William gestured to indicate it was no problem. "Yes, I'm new in town, and it seems like you know everyone around here?" "Almost everyone. I help my mom at the cafe after school. I even know how to make a cappuccino. Want to see?" "Liam?" Emily interjected, now genuinely concerned. "I'm sorry, sir." "William," he said, smiling, "and no need to worry. In fact, I'd love to see how you make a cappuccino." The boy's face lit up, but Emily was firm. "Not today, sweetheart. You need to do your homework first. Why don't you use that table over there in the corner?" As Liam made his way to the indicated table, still casting hopeful glances toward the coffee machine, Emily brought William's order. The aroma of coffee mixed with the scent of freshly baked cheese bread created an irresistible atmosphere. "Your son is adorable," William commented, watching the boy focused on his homework. "Thank you, he's my everything," Emily replied, and for a moment her expression grew distant. "It's not always easy being a single mom in a small town, but Liam makes it all worth it." There was something in the way she spoke, a mix of strength and vulnerability, that deeply touched William. Amid his own wounds and disappointments, he found himself admiring the resilience of this woman who managed a business and raised a child on her own. The doorbell chimed again, announcing the arrival of more customers. Emily excused herself and returned to work, leaving William lost in his thoughts. He observed the cafe's hustle and bustle, the way she treated every customer like family, the tenderness with which she supervised her son even while working. For the first time in a long while, William felt something different. It wasn't the superficial admiration people often showed him for his wealth, nor the calculated interest that had marked his past relationships. It was something deeper, more genuine. As he savored his coffee, he decided he would return the next day, and the day after that, and every day he could. That little cafe, with its cozy atmosphere and genuine people, was starting to feel more like home than any luxurious penthouse he had ever owned. What William didn't know was that his presence hadn't gone unnoticed by everyone. Across the street, through the window of the local bank, Michael Anderson watched him with growing interest. The bank manager, who had been pressuring Emily for months over the cafe's debts, had just recognized the famous businessman. A calculated smile formed on his lips as his mind worked through the possibilities that this information could bring. The afternoon progressed in Asheville, and with it, the first threads of a story that would forever change the lives of everyone involved began to intertwine. At the village coffee house, Emily continued her work, unaware that the arrival of that unassuming customer would mark the beginning of a story that would challenge everything she thought she knew about trust, love, and new beginnings. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us which city you're watching from and stay tuned. Weeks passed, and the village coffee house became William's favorite refuge in Asheville. May. Morning promptly at 9, he occupied the same table by the window, observing the cafe's routine with an interest that went beyond mere curiosity. Each day, he discovered something new about Emily and Liam, small details that made him admire them even more. That particular morning, the cafe was busier than usual. A group of tourists occupied several tables, filling the space with lively conversations and laughter. William noticed how Emily went out of her way to serve everyone with the same warm smile, even as her eyes betrayed her exhaustion. "Your special coffee, as always," she said, placing the steaming cup on William's table. "Liam asked about you yesterday. He was disappointed he couldn't show off his barista skills." William smiled, remembering the boy's enthusiasm. "Maybe another time. I don't want to cause any trouble." "You never cause trouble," Emily replied, and for a moment their eyes met. There was something unspoken in that instant, a connection they were both beginning to feel, but neither dared to name. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of a man in a well-tailored suit. Michael Anderson, the manager of the local bank, walked into the cafe with his usual air of superiority. William immediately noticed how Emily's posture changed, becoming more tense and defensive. "Miss Oliveira, can we talk for a moment?" Michael's voice was smooth, but there was a veiled threat in his tone. "I'm busy right now, Mr. Anderson. As you can see, the cafe is full. It's about the loan. The deadlines are approaching and we need to discuss your options." He cast a calculated glance in William's direction before continuing. "Unless you've already found a solution to your financial problems." Emily paled slightly, but maintained her composure. "We can talk after my shift." William watched the scene with growing interest. As an experienced businessman, he recognized an intimidation attempt when he saw one. His mind began to work, connecting the dots from previous conversations, small comments Emily had let slip about the difficulties of keeping the cafe running. After Michael left, Emily stood still for a few moments, her hands trembling slightly. William resisted the urge to stand up and confront her about what was going on. Instead, he discreetly picked up his phone and made a few notes. "Mum, can I go play with Pedro after school today?" Liam's voice broke the tension of the moment. The boy appeared carrying his backpack, oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded. "Not today, son. I have an important meeting after work." "But you promised." "Liam, please, not today." Emily's voice betrayed her exhaustion and worry. "I can help," William offered before he could think better of it. "I mean, if you trust me, I can take Liam to play with his friend while you take care of your commitments." Emily looked at him, surprised by the offer. For a moment, William feared he had crossed some invisible boundary in their still undefined relationship. But then she smiled, a different kind of smile, more vulnerable and genuine than the ones she usually gave to customers. "You'd do that? I didn't want to bother you. It's no trouble at all. In fact, it would be good for..." "Me too. It's been a while since I had an excuse to spend an afternoon at the park." Liam could barely contain his excitement. "You're really going? That's awesome. Can we get ice cream too?" "Liam!" Emily scolded him, but William laughed. "Ice cream sounds like a great idea. Of course, if your mom allows it." The rest of the morning passed quickly. William noticed how Emily alternated between serving customers and casting worried glances in his direction, as if she was still deciding whether she had made the right choice. He understood her hesitation. After all, to her, he was just a regular customer who had shown up a few weeks ago. At 3 in the afternoon, after the lunch rush had died down, Liam came straight from school to the coffee shop, brimming with energy and anticipation. Emily walked them to the door, giving detailed instructions about allergies, schedules, and emergency phone numbers. "Relax, Mom. William's cool. He won't let anything bad happen to me." The boy's innocent words hit William with unexpected force. The absolute trust in her voice, so different from the distrust he encountered in his corporate world, moved him deeply. "I promise to bring him back safe and sound," assured Emily, who still seemed torn between the need to solve her problems and her maternal concern. As they walked toward Pedro's house, Liam talked non-stop about his school, his friends, and his dreams of becoming a chef like his grandmother. William was surprised by how easily he found himself answering the boys' questions and sharing stories from his own childhood. What none of them noticed was the man discreetly photographing them from inside a parked car. Michael Anderson smiled as he reviewed the images on his camera. The powerful William Thompson, CEO of one of the country's largest tech companies, strolling with the son of a debt-ridden woman in a small town. The story practically wrote itself. In the park, as he watched Liam playing with Pedro and other children, William reflected on how his life had changed in recent weeks. The boy's carefree laughter echoed through the air, reminding him of an innocence he had long lost amid corporate battles and betrayals in the business world. "William, look what I can do!" shouted Liam, demonstrating an elaborate somersault on the grass. The businessman applauded, genuinely impressed by the child's agility. The hours flew by with games, ice cream, and stories. When the sun began to set, painting the sky of Asheville with orange hues, William realized it was time to head back. On the way back to the coffee shop, Liam naturally held his hand, excitedly recounting all the day's adventures. "Did you know? My mum works a lot. She says it's to give me a better life, but I wish she could play with me more like you did today." The innocent confession hit William like a punch to the gut. He thought of Emily, facing Michael Anderson and all the other challenges alone, always keeping a smile on her face for her son. When they arrived at the coffee shop, they found Emily closing up. Her face showed signs of worry, but upon seeing Liam running toward her with a radiant smile, her expression softened immediately. "Mom, it was the best day ever. William let me have 2 ice creams and taught me how to play marbles, and we played tag, and..." "2 ice creams?" Emily raised an eyebrow in William's direction, who had the decency to look embarrassed. "He had a very healthy lunch first, I promise," he defended himself, eliciting a laugh from her. "Thank you for taking care of him. It means a lot to me. To us." That us hung in the air between them, laden with unspoken meanings. William wanted to ask about the meeting with Michael, offer help, do something to ease the weight he saw on her shoulders. But she knew she needed to respect his space and his pride. "It was a pleasure. Liam is an incredible child. You're doing a wonderful job with him." For a moment, Emily seemed about to say something more, but then Liam hugged her, breaking the moment. "Mom, can William take us out again someday?" "We can't take advantage of his kindness, son," she replied, but her eyes met William's, questioning. "It would be my pleasure," he answered simply, feeling his heart race at the smile he received in return. As he walked back to his home in the mountains, William made a decision. Tomorrow he would start using his resources and connections to help Emily, even if anonymously. He couldn't bear the thought of seeing that coffee shop, which had become his refuge, fall into the hands of someone like Michael Anderson. What he didn't know was that his actions, however well-intentioned, were about to set off a chain of events that would test not only his ability to love again, but also the fragile trust beginning to build between him and Emily. The next morning, while the town still slept, Michael Anderson sent an email to his press contacts with photos of the mysterious businessman and Emily's son. The story he had crafted promised to be explosive. Tech billionaire hides in small town and gets close to humble family. It was just the beginning of his plan to get what he wanted. The sun had barely risen when Emily opened the village coffee house that morning. As she arranged the tables and turned on the machines, her mind kept returning to the meeting with Michael Anderson. The bank manager had been inflexible about the payment deadlines, but something about his behavior seemed different. He was oddly interested in her regular customers, especially William. The thought made her pause for a moment, her hands hovering over the coffee machine. William. Since his arrival at the coffee shop, something had changed in their routine. It wasn't just the way Liam lit up in his presence, or how the other customers seemed more at ease when he was around. It was something deeper, a sense of security she hadn't felt in a long time. "Good morning, Mari," the voice of Mrs. Clara. Her longest-serving employee interrupted her thoughts. "Daydreaming already at this hour?" Emily smiled, returning to reality. "Just organizing my thoughts, Clara. We have that group of tourists who reserved a table for breakfast, remember?" "Oh, yes. And it looks like your secret admirer won't be long either." Clara winked, making Emily blush. "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, trying to maintain her seriousness, but a stubborn smile kept creeping onto her lips. The morning was busy, with the coffee shop packed with tourists and locals. William arrived at his usual time, but something about his expression was different. He seemed more tense, frequently checking his phone with a worried frown on his forehead. "Is everything okay?" Emily asked as she served his special coffee. "Yes, just some work matters," he replied, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. What Emily didn't know was that William had just received a troubling message from his lawyer in Chicago. The news of his presence in Asheville had leaked, and some journalists were already speculating about the reasons for his voluntary exile. Even worse, someone had provided photos of him with Liam at the park. Meanwhile, at school, Liam was facing his own challenges. During recess, a classmate approached him with a tablet in hand. "Hey, Liam, is it true that this rich guy in the photo is your new dad?" The boy looked confused at the screen, where a photo of him and William at the park illustrated a gossip article. His heart raced as he read the sensationalist headline suggesting a secret romance between his mother and a mysterious businessman. "William is just my mum's friend," he replied, feeling his cheeks burn. "My dad said he's a billionaire, that he has huge companies in Chicago." Another classmate chimed in, drawing more curious kids into the conversation. Back at the coffee shop, Emily began to notice unusual glances and whispers from the customers. Some people discreetly took photos with their phones, while others pointed in William's direction. The situation became clear when a customer accidentally left a gossip magazine open on the table. Her heart froze as she saw the photo of William at a luxurious party in Chicago, next to a headline identifying him as the CEO of the country's largest tech company. The pieces began to fall into place in her mind. The polite conversations, his interest in the coffee shop, how easily he had offered to help with Liam. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked when she finally got a moment alone with him. William looked up from his laptop, meeting her hurt gaze. "Emily, all this time you pretended to be just another customer. Why? What do you really want?" The pain in her voice hit him like a physical blow. "It's not what you're thinking. I just wanted a place where I could be myself, without all the expectations and judgments that come with my name. And lying to me and Liam was part of this social experiment of yours," she shot back, her voice trembling slightly. Before William could respond, the door of the coffee shop swung open violently. A tall man wearing jeans and a dress shirt entered with determined steps. Emily paled as she recognized him. "Daniel!" she whispered, incredulous. The newcomer completely ignored William, focusing his attention on Emily. "It's been a while, Em. I came as soon as I saw the news. I couldn't let our son get caught up in this media circus." William watched the scene with a mix of confusion and concern. The man who had just entered had the same eyes as Liam, and his posture suggested a familiarity with the place that could only come from a long time ago. "You have no right to show up like this after all these years," Emily replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I have every right. I'm Liam's father, or have you forgotten that?" The tension in the room was palpable. Other customers began to discreetly observe the scene, while Mrs. Clara positioned herself strategically near the phone, ready to call for help if needed. "I think it's best we continue this conversation in private," Emily suggested, casting an apologetic glance at William. Daniel smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Of course, we have a lot to talk about, especially about how you're exposing our son in the media because of your new friend." The way he emphasized the last word made William's blood boil, but he remained calm. Years of tough negotiations had taught him to control his emotions in tense situations. "Mr. Johnson," William stood up, his voice calm but firm, "I suggest you carefully consider your next words and actions." "And who are you to tell me what to do?" Daniel retorted, turning to face him. The imminent confrontation was interrupted by the sound of the door opening again. Liam came running in, as he did every day after school, but stopped abruptly at the sight before him. "Dad?" His small, confused voice cut through the tense silence like a knife. The moment froze. Emily felt her heart tighten as she saw the confusion in her son's eyes. William remained still, torn between the desire to protect Emily and Liam, and the awareness that he had no right to do so. And Daniel, for the first time since he had entered, seemed to lose some of his confidence as he faced the son he hadn't seen in years. The silence that followed Liam's recognition seemed to last an eternity. Emily was the first to move, instinctively stepping closer to her son and placing her hands protectively on his shoulders. "Liam, sweetheart, why don't you go with Mrs. Clara to do your homework in the back?" she suggested softly, exchanging a meaningful glance with her employee. "But Mom," the boy began to protest, his eyes darting between Daniel and William with visible confusion. "Please, son," Emily insisted, and something in her voice made Liam obey, though reluctantly. As soon as the boy disappeared into the back of the cafe with Mrs. Clara, Daniel took a step forward. "He's so grown up," he remarked, his voice softer now. "I can hardly believe so many years have passed." "Years you chose to spend away from him," Emily replied, her voice trembling slightly. "What do you want now, Daniel?" "What any father wants, to protect his son. I saw the news, Emily. Your cafe is in debt. You're getting involved with a mysterious millionaire," he shot an accusatory glance at William. "And now our son is being exposed in the media." William watched the interaction with growing concern. Years of business experience had taught him to read people, and something about Daniel's behavior didn't seem sincere. "Your sudden concern is touching," Emily replied with irony, "but Liam and I are fine. We don't need your protection." "That's not how it looks," Daniel insisted, stepping closer. "I have rights as a father, Emily. I can request shared custody, you know? Especially if I can prove that the environment isn't healthy for him." The veiled threat made Emily pale. William took a step forward, unable to keep just watching. "Mr. Johnson, your concerns are understandable, but threats aren't the best way to resolve this situation. And who are you to have an opinion about my family?" Daniel turned to face him. The big-shot businessman hiding in a small town, playing Prince Charming to a single mother and her son. "Enough!" Emily's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Daniel, you lost the right to have a say in my life or Liam's the moment you decided to abandon us. And William," she turned to him, her eyes brimming with tears, "I appreciate your concern, but I need to handle this on my own." The village coffee house had emptied during the argument, the last customers slipping out discreetly as they noticed the family drama unfolding. Only Michael Anderson remained in a corner, watching everything with poorly concealed interest. "Emily," William tried again, his heart aching as he saw the pain in her eyes, I just wanted to help. I never meant to cause trouble." "But you did," she replied softly. "Your presence here, your lies by omission, all of it has drawn attention that neither Liam nor I needed." Before anyone could respond, Liam came running back from the back, having slipped away from Mrs. Clara's supervision. "Mom, is it true that William is rich? The kids at school were saying he owns huge buildings in Chicago and that—" "Liam, not now," Emily gently interrupted him. "Why is everyone fighting?" The boy continued, his voice small and confused. "Dad, are you going to live here now, and William, are you leaving?" The innocent questions hit all the adults present, like a punch to the gut. Emily felt tears welling up in her eyes as she saw the confusion and fear on her son's face. "No one's leaving, champ." Daniel stepped closer, trying to touch his son, but Liam dodged him, running to stand near William. The child's instinctive movement didn't go unnoticed by anyone. Daniel clenched his fists, his face hardening. "See what you've done," accused William. "A few weeks here and you've already turned my son against me." "I never—" William began to defend himself, but was interrupted by Emily. "Please, all of you, leave. I need to talk to my son alone." The authority in her voice left no room for argument. Daniel was the first to head for the door, not without casting one last threatening glance at William. "This isn't over, Em. You'll be hearing from me soon." William hesitated at the door, his heart breaking as he saw Liam silently crying in his mother's arms. "Emily, I'm sorry for everything. I never meant to hurt you." She simply nodded, unable to respond as she tried to comfort her son. Outside, Michael Anderson smiled with satisfaction as he quickly typed on his phone. The drama he had just witnessed would be perfect for his plans. With Daniel back and William exposed, it would only be a matter of time before he got what he wanted. That night, after putting Liam to sleep, Emily sat alone in the kitchen of the coffee shop, staring at a cup of tea that had gone cold. Daniel's words about shared custody echoed in her mind, mingling with the image of William's hurt face and her son's confused questions. In his mountain home, William stared at his laptop screen, where dozens of headlines speculated about his presence in Asheville and his relationship with the charming local coffee shop owner. His PR team had already contacted him several times, asking for guidance on how to proceed. In a hotel in town, Daniel made an important call. "Yes, Mr. Anderson. I think we've reached an agreement. Help me get custody of my son, and I guarantee you'll have the coffee shop in your hands soon." The night deepened in Asheville, and with it, the fates of these very different people became increasingly intertwined. The cold mountain wind blew through the trees, carrying with it whispers of secrets yet to be revealed and promises left unfulfilled. The next morning, the village coffee house did not open its doors for the first time in years. Regular customers found only a discreet notice on the door. "Closed for personal reasons." The news spread quickly through the small town, fueling even more speculation about the unfolding drama. William spent hours in his makeshift office, alternating between calls with his lawyers and frustrated attempts to contact Emily. Each unanswered call and unread message deepened his anguish. He knew he needed to do something, but for the first time in his life, his power and money seemed insignificant in the face of the problem he was confronting. At home, Emily was fighting her own battle. Liam had woken up with a fever, likely a result of the emotional stress from the previous day. As she cared for her son, she tried to organize her thoughts and decide what her next move would be. "Mom," Liam called from his bed, his voice weak from the fever, "is William not going to be our friend anymore?" The innocent question made Emily's heart tighten. "It's complicated, sweetheart. Sometimes adults need time to sort things out. But didn't he lie to us? Sophia from my class said he's like a rich superhero hiding in town." Emily sat on the edge of her son's bed, gently stroking his hair. "Not everything is that simple. Dear, people sometimes keep secrets for reasons we don't always understand." Meanwhile, at the local bank, Michael Anderson received an unexpected visitor. Daniel Johnson entered his office with a confident smile, carrying a folder full of documents. "I brought everything you asked for," he announced, placing the folder on the table. "Records of abandonment, proof of delayed child support payments, everything that could tarnish the image of the responsible father I tried to build." Michael examined the documents with interest. "Impressive how you kept evidence of your own mistakes, Mr. Johnson. Let's just say I always knew they might come in handy one day. Now about our agreement." Yes, Michael interrupted, standing up to pour 2 glasses of wine. "With these documents and the negative media exposure, it'll be easy to pressure Emily into selling the coffee shop. And you, as a remorseful father, trying to protect your son from a manipulative businessman, will get your share of custody." The plan seemed perfect, but neither man noticed the figure passing by in the hallway at that moment. Mrs. Clara, who had come to the bank to handle personal matters, overheard enough to make her heart freeze. Without wasting any time, she grabbed her phone and typed an urgent message to Emily. By late afternoon, as the sun set over the mountains of Asheville, 3 important letters were written. The first, from William to Emily, explained his entire story, his reasons for hiding in town, and how meeting her had changed his life. The second, from Emily to her lawyer, requested guidance on how to protect her rights and Liam's. And the third, from Mrs. Clara to the federal police, detailed the conspiracy she had witnessed at the bank. Fate, that tireless weaver of stories, continued to intertwine the threads of those people's lives, creating a pattern that none of them could yet fully comprehend. And as night fell over the city, bringing with it the silence of the mountains, each of them was preparing, unknowingly, for the events that would change their lives forever. Morning arrived in Asheville, bringing with it a dense fog that covered the mountains like a veil. Emily was sitting in her small kitchen, rereading for the 3rd time the message Mrs. Clara had sent the night before. The words danced before her eyes, each one carrying the weight of a revelation that would change everything. "Michael and Daniel are plotting together," the message said. "They want to use the media and William's story to pressure you into selling the cafe. Daniel is going to try to get custody of Liam." Her hands trembled as she held the now cold cup of coffee. From the next room, she could hear the calm breathing of Liam, who had finally managed to sleep after a restless night of fever and nightmares. Guilt consumed her from within. Her son was suffering the consequences of a situation she couldn't control. The soft sound of knocks on the front door pulled her from her thoughts. Her heart raced at the thought that it might be William, but when she opened the door, she found only a thick envelope resting on the doormat. Her name was written in an elegant handwriting she didn't recognize. Inside the envelope, she found a lengthy letter and several documents. The letter began, "Dear Emily, there are thousands of ways to start this letter, but I choose the simplest and most truthful. Forgive me, not for who I am, but for not trusting you enough to share my story from the beginning. You deserve to know the whole truth about why I came to Asheville and why I chose to keep my identity a secret." The following pages revealed a story Emily could never have imagined. William described in detail how his partner, Richard, had not only sold confidential company information, but had also manipulated data to make it seem as though William himself was involved in questionable operations. "Money was never important to me," he wrote. "What made me leave Chicago was the betrayal of someone I considered a brother. Richard not only betrayed my professional trust, he tried to destroy everything I built with years of honest work." As she read, Emily began to understand better the man who visited her cafe every morning. The documents accompanying the letter included newspaper clippings about the corporate scandal, emails that proved William's innocence, and, most surprisingly, information about the debts of the village coffee house. "I discovered that Michael Anderson has been manipulating the interest rates and fees on your loan for months," the letter continued. "He is artificially creating a situation of default that doesn't exist. I've attached the documents that prove this, including a detailed analysis done by my legal team." At that moment, Liam appeared in the kitchen, still sleepy and with fever-red eyes. "Mom, I'm hungry." Emily quickly put away the letter and went to prepare breakfast for her son. As she made pancakes, his favorite comfort food for tough days, her mind raced, processing all the information she had just received. "Mom," Liam called after a few moments of silence, "I dreamed about Dad. He looked different in the dream, more like he did in the old photos you showed me." The innocent comment struck Emily like an arrow. The old photos she kept were from a time when she believed Daniel truly loved them, before she discovered he had gotten involved in questionable schemes that forced him to flee town, abandoning them without explanation. "Liam, sweetheart," she began, carefully choosing her words, "sometimes people change, and sometimes they just show who they really are." "Like William?" the boy asked, surprising her with his insight. "He lied about being rich, but he never lied about liking us, right?" Before Emily could respond, her phone buzzed with a message from her lawyer, Dr. Paul. "We need to talk urgently. Daniel has filed for shared custody. The allegations are serious." Panic began to settle in her chest, but Emily took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm for her son. At that moment, another message arrived, this time from an unknown number. "Emily, this is Sophia, Mr. Anderson's secretary. I know we don't know each other, but I need you to know that he and Mr. Johnson are planning something for this afternoon. I overheard them talking about using the press to pressure you. Please be careful." The morning progressed, and with it, Emily felt the weight of the decisions she would need to make. Outside her house, she could see photographers discreetly positioning themselves, their cameras aimed at her windows like predators waiting for the right moment to strike. Meanwhile, in the makeshift office at his mountain home, William was fighting his own battles. His phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from journalists and his team in Chicago. The news about his secret romance with a single mother from the countryside had spread like wildfire. "Sir," his assistant spoke on the phone, "Richard is giving interviews, hinting that your presence in Asheville is related to the fraud allegations, though suggesting you're hiding something." William felt his blood boil. His former partner was using the situation to divert attention from his own criminal actions. But before she could respond, she received a message that made her heart stop. "I know everything about you and Richard." It was from Michael Anderson. "How about we talk about the future of the village coffee house? I'm sure we can reach an agreement that benefits everyone." In his office at the bank, Michael smiled with satisfaction as he watched Daniel Johnson organizing a small, impromptu press conference in the city center. The plan was working perfectly. Soon the whole city would know the story of the remorseful father fighting to protect his son from a corrupt businessman. What none of them knew was that Mrs. Clara wasn't alone in her discovery. Other bank employees had also overheard suspicious conversations, and little by little, a dossier with evidence of Michael's manipulations was being compiled. At school, Liam was facing his own challenges. During recess, a reporter managed to get close to the playground, trying to take photos and ask questions. The principal had to call security, and the boy was taken inside the building, frightened and confused. "I want to go home, Mom," he pleaded with the coordinator, tears streaming down his feverish face. "Why is everyone talking about my mom?" And William. The situation was reaching a critical point. Emily knew she had to act, but every move felt like a trap. If she sold the coffee shop, she would lose her grandmother's legacy and everything she had fought for. If she fought against Daniel, she would expose Liam to a painful and public ordeal. That afternoon, as the sun began to set behind the mountains, 3 people made decisions that would change the course of this story. Emily, after hours of reflection, picked up her phone and typed a message. William, in his office, finally found the proof he had been searching for in his company's old files. And Mrs. Clara, the only one who knew all the pieces of the puzzle, decided it was time to reveal everything she knew. The afternoon sun illuminated the central square of Asheville, where a small group of journalists gathered in front of the gazebo. Daniel Johnson, wearing a well-tailored suit that looked brand new, adjusted his tie as he prepared to make his statement. Michael Anderson watched from a distance, a satisfied smile playing on his lips. The plan was in motion. In just a few minutes, Daniel would deliver his emotional speech about being a remorseful father, determined to protect his son from a supposedly corrupt businessman who was manipulating his ex-wife. The story would be perfect for the tabloids, the heroic father against the villainous billionaire. However, they hadn't counted on what was about to happen. Emily arrived first, surprising everyone as she calmly walked to the center of the square. She was dressed simply, but there was a dignity in her posture that immediately made the photographers start snapping their cameras. "Good afternoon," she greeted, her voice steady despite the nervousness she felt. "Since everyone is here to hear a story, I think it's only fair that you hear all sides." Daniel stepped forward, trying to interrupt her. "Emily, don't do this. Think about Liam. It's exactly him I'm thinking about, she replied, pulling an envelope from her bag. And all the other people who were harmed by your lies. At that moment, William appeared from the other side of the square, accompanied by two men Michael recognized immediately. They were auditors from the central bank. The bank manager felt his blood run cold. "Members of the press," William began, his voice projecting with the confidence of someone used to commanding meeting rooms. "You were called here today to hear a story about corruption and manipulation, and you will hear exactly that, but not in the way some expected." Emily stepped forward, standing beside William. The image of the two together, facing the cameras side by side, was powerful. The photographers worked frantically, capturing every moment. "7 years ago," Emily started, "I was a young mother who had just inherited my grandmother's coffee shop. Daniel, who was my husband at the time, disappeared after getting involved in questionable business dealings. He left me alone with our infant son and a debt I barely understood." Daniel tried to interrupt again, but William raised his hand, silencing him. "Please, Mr. Johnson, your turn to speak will come soon, likely in a more official setting." It was then that Mrs. Clara emerged from the growing crowd, carrying a thick folder of documents. "I have here," she announced, "records of all the manipulations made on the village coffee house loans over the past few years. Mr. Anderson systematically altered rates, created non-existent penalties, and refused payments to force a default situation." Michael Anderson tried to discreetly step away, but found his path blocked by one of the auditors. "I think you'll want to stay for this presentation, Mr. Anderson," the auditor remarked dryly. The crowd grew larger by the minute. Locals, regular, customers of the coffee shop and curious onlookers approached, forming a circle around the unfolding scene. Among them, shielded by the strong presence of the school principal, was Liam, his wide eyes taking it all in. "When William arrived in Asheville," Emily continued, "he wasn't running from any scandal. He was, in fact, following leads that brought him here. Clues that connected his former partner Richard to a network of banking fraud that extended to our small town." William then took the floor, his deep voice echoing across the square. Mr. Anderson was not acting alone. He was part of a larger scheme that used small-town banks to launder money and commit loan fraud. The same scheme my former partner Richard used in Chicago. The revelation caused a murmur among the crowd. Daniel, seeing his plan crumble, tried one last move. "What about Liam? You're using my son as a pawn in your power game." It was at that moment that Liam, to everyone's surprise, broke free from the principal and ran to his mother. Emily hugged him protectively, but the boy turned to face his father. "Why did you only come back now, Dad? Why did you never answer?" "My letters. Mum always let me write to you on your birthday and Christmas." The impact of the innocent words was devastating. Daniel paled, while murmurs of disapproval spread through the crowd. A sharp reporter was already scribbling furiously in her notebook. "Gentlemen," one of the central bank auditors spoke up, "I believe we already have enough evidence to proceed with formal investigations. Mr. Anderson, Mr. Johnson, we would like you to accompany us to the police station to provide some clarifications." Michael, seeing himself cornered, tried one last desperate move. "I have documents that prove irregularities in Mr. Thompson's businesses. He's not the saint he's trying to appear to be." "The documents you received from Richard?" William asked calmly, pulling his own envelope from his jacket. "These here, because I have the originals here, showing how they were tampered with, including the digital trail of the alterations." The square fell into a tense silence. The journalists, who initially expected to cover a story about a love triangle in a small town, now found themselves facing a financial scandal of much larger proportions. "But you know what's most interesting?" Emily spoke up again, her voice filled with restrained emotion. "During all these years, running the coffee shop alone, facing prejudice and hardships, I learned something important. The truth always finds its way." Liam, still hugging his mother, looked at William with eyes shining with admiration. "Did you know about all this from the beginning? Is that why you kept coming to the coffee shop?" William knelt down to be at the boy's level. "At first I came to the coffee shop because I was following leads, but I kept coming back because of the two of you. Because your smile and your mum's special coffee, became the best part of my days." The sincerity of those words touched everyone present. Even some of the more cynical journalists seemed moved. "Mr. Johnson, Mr. Anderson," the auditor called, again now more firmly. "Shall we?" As the two men were led out of the square, the crowd began to disperse. Some longtime customers of the coffee shop approached Emily, offering words of support and solidarity. Others congratulated William for his courage in standing up to injustice. "What happens now?" Liam asked, looking between his mother and William. "Now," Emily replied, taking her son's hand, "we're reopening the coffee shop. We have customers waiting for Grandma Rose's special cheese bread." "And can I finally learn how to make cappuccino?" the boy asked hopefully. William and Emily exchanged a knowing glance before laughing together. "I think now's a good time for that lesson," William replied, making the boy's eyes light up. The afternoon fell over Asheville, and with it a new chapter began for everyone. At the village coffee house, the machine started running again, the aroma of fresh coffee once more filling the air. Old and new customers filled the tables, many curious to taste the coffee that had become the center of such an extraordinary story. In the kitchen, Mrs. Clara supervised proudly as Liam, with William's careful guidance, made his first attempt at preparing a cappuccino. Emily watched the scene, her heart overflowing with emotions she could barely name. The doorbell chimed, announcing the arrival of more customers, and Emily returned to work with a smile on her lips. The headlines of the next day's newspapers would tell many versions of this story, but the true story of the village coffee house was right there, in the love that united those people, in the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, and in the promise of better days to come. The weeks following the events in the square brought significant changes for everyone in Asheville. The village coffee house, far from suffering from the media exposure, became an unexpected tourist spot. Visitors from all over the country appeared to taste the coffee that had won the heart of one of Brazil's most influential businessmen. Emily watched the transformations with a mix of gratitude and apprehension. On a particularly busy morning, as she prepared another batch of cheese bread, she reflected on how her life had changed so drastically in such a short time. "We need 3 more special coffees and 2 cappuccinos," Mrs. Clara announced, entering the kitchen with her characteristic energy. "And there are some journalists wanting to schedule an interview again." "I already said we're not giving any more interviews," Emily replied, focused on her task. "Our story has been told enough." The doorbell announced the arrival of more customers, and the usual buzz of the coffee shop was interrupted for a moment. Emily didn't need to look to know who had arrived. The respectful silence always accompanied William's entrance. "Good morning," he greeted, heading straight to the kitchen. "I brought a surprise for you." Liam, who was organizing the coffee beans as his mother had taught him, ran to hug him. Lately, the boy had grown even closer to William, especially after he started helping him with his math homework. "What is it? What is it?" the boy asked, jumping with excitement. William pulled an envelope from his pocket and handed it to Emily. "It's official. The bank approved the coffee shop's refinancing at the correct rates. All irregular charges have been cancelled." Emily opened the envelope with trembling hands, her eyes quickly scanning the documents. Tears began to form as she reached the end. It means the coffee shop is completely regularized," William finished. "And more than that, you're entitled to a considerable compensation for the years of improper charges." The news spread quickly through the coffee shop, sparking a small spontaneous celebration among the regular customers. Mrs. Clara couldn't hold back her tears, hugging Emily tightly. "Your grandmother would be so proud," she whispered. "You never gave up, even in the toughest moments." Liam, though he didn't fully understand the importance of the documents, felt the joy in the air. "Does this mean we can buy that new coffee machine you wanted, Mom?" Emily laughed, wiping away her tears. "It means much more than that, son. It means all our family's hard work has paid off." William watched the scene with a subtle smile, his heart warmed by the genuine happiness he saw on the faces around him. Over the past few weeks, while working behind the scenes to resolve the cafe situation, he had discovered something his money had never given him, a sense of belonging. "There's one more thing," he said, pulling another envelope from his jacket. "Liam, this is for you." The boy opened the envelope curiously, finding a colorful certificate inside. "Junior barista course," he read aloud, his eyes wide with excitement. "It's a special program I arranged with the Brazilian Coffee Association," William explained. "You'll be the first student in the pilot class. Of course, if your mom allows it." Emily looked at her son, who was practically vibrating with anticipation, and then at William. There was so much in her gaze: gratitude, affection, and something deeper she wasn't yet ready to name. "I think it's more than time for you to officially learn how to make that cappuccino," she replied, making her son jump for joy. The rest of the morning passed in a subdued, celebratory mood. The regular customers, who had followed the family's journey over the years, shared in the joy as if it were their own victory. During a lull in the activity, William found a moment to speak privately with Emily. "There's one more thing we need to discuss," he began, his tone more serious. "What is it?" she asked, noticing his expression. "Richard, my former partner, reached out. He wants to make a deal with the authorities and is willing to reveal all the details of the fraud scheme, including Daniel's involvement." Emily felt a tightness in her chest at the mention of her ex-husband's name. Since the confrontation in the square, he had disappeared again, leaving only a trail of ongoing lawsuits and investigations. "Liam asks about him sometimes," she confessed. "It's hard to explain to a child why some people make the choices they do." William gently placed his hand over hers. "You've been doing an amazing job, Emily. Liam is an extraordinary boy, and that's thanks to you." His touch sent an electric current through her skin, making her blush slightly. Lately, moments like this had become more frequent. Gentle touches, lingering glances, unspoken words hanging in the air between them. "You know," she began, gathering courage, "Liam asked me yesterday if you'd like to have dinner with us sometime, to celebrate his course." William's smile lit up his face. "I'd love to, but this time let me do the cooking. You already work too much." "You cook?" she asked, surprised. "There are many things about me you still don't know, Emily Oliveira," he replied with a playful glint in his eyes. The moment was interrupted by Liam, who came running to show a new drawing he had made, a colorful depiction of the cafe, with him, his mom, and William smiling in front of it. "Look, I drew our family," he exclaimed innocently, making the adults exchange surprised and emotional glances. That afternoon, as the sun began its descent behind the mountains of Asheville, the village coffee house was more than full. It was overflowing with hope. The aromas of fresh coffee and cheese bread mingled in the air with laughter and conversation, creating an atmosphere that no amount of money could buy. In the kitchen, Liam had his first official lesson on how to operate the coffee machine, under the watchful eyes of his mom and William. Mrs. Clara observed the scene with a knowing smile as she organized the last deliveries of the day. The future, which once seemed so uncertain, now stretched before them like a blank page, ready to be filled with new stories, new smiles, and perhaps new beginnings. Autumn arrived in Asheville, bringing with it an explosion of colors and milder temperatures. The village coffee house had undergone a small renovation, incorporating modern elements without losing its characteristic rustic charm. The new Italian coffee machine gleamed on the counter, and Liam, now proudly wearing his junior barista apron, demonstrated his newly acquired skills to admiring customers. That special morning, the cafe was closed for a private event. Emily had finally given in to the persistent requests of a culinary magazine for a full feature on the history of the establishment. The condition, however, was that it be intimate and focused on the true heart of the cafe. The people and the stories, that made it special. "So, Mrs. Clara," the reporter asked, "you've worked here since Emily's grandmother was alive. What was the cafe like back then?" The lady smiled, her eyes sparkling with memories. "Mrs. Rose, Emily's grandmother, had a special gift. She used to say that coffee isn't just a drink, it's a hug in liquid form. That philosophy was passed down to Emily, and now it's being passed on to Liam." Across the room, the boy was showcasing his latest creation, a cappuccino decorated with a heart design in the foam. William, who had arrived early to help with the preparations, watched with evident pride. "Mr. Thompson," the reporter approached, "many have speculated about your reasons for staying in Asheville even after the scandal was resolved. Doesn't your company in Chicago require your presence?" William smiled, his eyes meeting Emily's from across the coffee shop. "I've discovered that there are different forms of success in life. In Chicago, I had professional achievements, but here I found something more valuable." The response made Emily blush slightly as she arranged a tray of freshly baked cheese breads. Over the past few weeks, her relationship with William had evolved naturally, as if following the gentle rhythm of the mountains surrounding the town. "Mom," Liam called excitedly, "look what I learned in class." He began preparing a special coffee, his small hands moving with surprising precision. The reporter watched in fascination as the boy worked, jotting down notes in her notebook. "What was it like for you, Liam, to discover that your story had become so famous?" The boy thought for a moment, his eyebrows furrowed in concentration. "At first it was strange. Some kids at school kept asking me about William being rich and famous. But then I explained that he's cool not because of the money, but because he genuinely cares about us." The sincerity of the response touched everyone present. William, in particular, felt his heart tighten at the purity of those words. "And about your biological father," the reporter continued delicately. "How do you handle that situation?" Emily made a move to intervene, but Liam was already answering with a maturity surprising for his age. "My mom always says that family is who chooses to be with us during the important moments. What matters is love, right?" The answer prompted emotional smiles. Mrs. Clara discreetly wiped away a tear, while William placed a protective hand on the boy's shoulder. The morning progressed with the magazine team photographing the details of the coffee shop, interviewing regular customers, and capturing spontaneous moments among the protagonists of that extraordinary story. In a quieter moment, Emily found William gazing at old photographs on the wall. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, stopping beside him. "About how life takes interesting turns," he replied, his fingers lightly brushing against hers. "I came to Asheville looking for answers about a corporate fraud and found answers to questions I didn't even know I had." Emily intertwined her fingers with his, a gesture that now felt as natural as breathing. "You know what's funny? For years I ran this coffee shop dreaming of making it a success, but it was only when I stopped worrying about success and focused on what really mattered, the love for what we do, the care for our customers, Liam's happiness, that everything started to fall into place." "I think I've learned the same lesson," William confessed. "In Chicago, I was so focused on building something grand that I forgot to build something meaningful." The moment was interrupted by Liam, who approached with a steaming cup. "I made a special coffee for you with a double heart design in the foam because you two are my two loves." The innocent declaration made the adult smile, moved. The reporter, who discreetly captured the moment, realized she had found the true heart of her story. Later, when the magazine team had left, the coffee shop remained closed for a special lunch. William, keeping his promise, had prepared a full Italian meal. The table was set on the back porch, overlooking the mountains. "A toast," he proposed, raising his glass, "to the village coffee house and all the dreams it has helped us achieve. And to the new dreams we'll still achieve together," Liam added, raising his juice glass. Emily watched the two most important men in her life, her heart overflowing with gratitude and love. Her grandmother's coffee shop, which had once been just a small establishment in a tourist town, had become the setting for a story of resilience, love, and new beginnings. Mrs. Clara, who joined them for the celebration, smiled as she saw the family forming before her eyes. "Your grandmother always said the coffee shop had magic," she commented to Emily. "I think I understand now what she meant." The afternoon sun bathed the valley, painting the sky with golden hues that seemed to bless the moment. The gentle breeze carried the scent of garden flowers, mingling with the unmistakable aroma of the coffee that had brought so many stories together. William watched Emily laughing at something Liam was excitedly telling her. His heart filled with a calm certainty. That was his place there with them, in that town that had welcomed him when he was lost and had given him far more than he ever expected to find. "So you know," he began as Liam ran inside to fetch his latest culinary creation, "I've been thinking about some changes." Emily looked at him curiously. "What kind of changes?" "I've decided to move the company headquarters to Asheville," he revealed, Not the entire operation, of course, but the main office. With today's technology, I can manage everything from here. And so, she encouraged, her heart beating a little faster. And so I can be more present. For you, for Liam, for our family. The word family hung in the air like a promise. Emily felt her eyes fill with tears, but before she could respond, Liam came running back with a homemade cake he had made with the help of Mrs. Clara. "Look, I made it just like Grandma's recipe," he announced proudly. Well, almost just like it, but it was made with lots of love, which is the most important secret ingredient, right, Mum? Emily hugged her son, looking over his head at William. "Yes, my love, love is always the most important ingredient." The afternoon drifted gently in Asheville. At the village coffee house where it had all begun, a new story was unfolding, no longer a story of secrets and mistrust, but one of love, fresh starts, and the special magic found only in the small joys of everyday life. And so, as the sun set behind the mountains, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee continued to linger in the air, as it always had, as it always would, bringing people together, healing hearts, and weaving new dreams in the small town that had become the perfect setting for this love story. Spring arrived in Asheville, bringing with it an explosion of colors and renewal. The village coffee house, now fully renovated and expanded, retained its original charm while embracing the changes time had brought. On the new facade, an elegant sign announced, "Village Coffee House, tradition since 1962, a place where stories meet." On that special Saturday morning, Emily woke before the sun. As she prepared the dough for the cheese bread, following the recipe her grandmother had taught her, she thought about how her life had transformed over the past few months. The coffee house was no longer just a business. It had become a symbol of resilience and renewal for the entire town. "Need any help?" William's soft voice surprised her. He was leaning against the kitchen doorframe, already dressed elegantly for the special day that awaited them. "I thought you were still asleep," she smiled, noticing how perfectly at ease he seemed there, as if he had always been a part of that kitchen, that life. "How could I sleep today? It's far too important a day," he replied, stepping closer to steal a quick kiss before starting to help with the preparations. The village coffee house would be the stage that day for the inauguration of the first barista training center in the Paraíba Valley. The project, a partnership between William and Emily, aimed primarily to offer free professional training to young people in the region. The first class was already full, with Liam proudly occupying one of the spots. "Mom, Dad, look what arrived!" Liam ran into the kitchen, still in his pajamas, carrying an official envelope. The word Dad, directed at William, had started to come. Naturally, a few weeks ago, after the adoption was finalized. The envelope contained the official confirmation. The village coffee house had been selected to join the official culinary tourism route of the state. It was another achievement to add to the growing list of accomplishments that had turned the small cafe into a national landmark. "This calls for a special celebration," William declared, scooping Liam up into his arms, even though the boy was already too big for that. "How about that special cappuccino you've been practicing?" The boy's eyes lit up. "Can I really make it? Today is such an important day, I don't want to mess anything up." "Son," Emily interjected, "you never mess anything up. Every attempt, every mistake, every success, it's all part of the learning process. Your grandma always said that." As Liam focused on his task, Emily and William exchanged knowing glances. The transformation in the boy over the past few months had been remarkable. From the insecure child who was afraid of disappointing, he had become a confident young man, passionate about the art of coffee. The sun was already high when the first guests began to arrive. The inauguration ceremony for the training center attracted officials, journalists, and most importantly, dozens of young people eager to start their training. Mrs. Clara, now the coordinator of the cafe's social project, greeted the guests with her characteristic charm. "Look here," she commented to a group of visitors, "that coffee machine over there, that's where it all began. Where a famous businessman fell in love not just with our coffee, but with the soul of this place." In a discreet corner of the room, an entire wall had been dedicated to the history of the village coffee house. Old photographs showed Mrs. Rose, Emily's grandmother, during the early days of the business. Nearby, recent articles told the story of resilience and love that had transformed the establishment. "Excuse me," Liam called everyone's attention, stepping onto a small platform. Wearing his junior barista uniform, he looked like the perfect image of the future the training center promised. "I'd like to give a special thank you." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to the boy who had become a symbol of the union between tradition and innovation. "My great-grandmother started this coffee house, believing that a well-prepared cup could change someone's day. My mother carried on that dream, even when everything seemed impossible. And then," he looked at William with teary eyes, "someone came along who showed us that the best dreams are the ones we dream together." The emotion in the room was palpable. Emily held William's hand tightly, feeling as though her heart might burst with pride and love. "That's why," Liam continued, "I want to dedicate my first official presentation as a junior barista to the three people who taught me the true meaning of family. My mother, who never gave up. My father, William, who chose to be part of our story. And my great-grandmother, Rose, who started it all with so much love and a dream." The boy then approached the coffee machine, his small but steady hands preparing 3 special drinks. The audience watched in respectful silence as he created true works of art in the foam of each cup. "For my mother," he presented the first cup, decorated with a heart intertwined with a musical note, "because she always says coffee is like music for the soul." "For my father," the second cup featured a drawing of mountains under a rising sun, "because he showed us that after every storm comes the light." The third cup, adorned with a delicate coffee flower, was placed in a special spot on the counter. "And this is for my great-grandmother Rose, who taught us that love is the secret ingredient in every recipe for success." Emotional applause filled the room. William hugged Emily and Liam, forming a perfect circle of love and fulfillment. The village coffee house, which had once been just a dream in the mind of a young entrepreneur, was now a living testament that love, when nurtured with dedication and watered with quality coffee, can flourish in the most unexpected places. Summer had arrived in Asheville, bringing with it the mild warmth characteristic of the mountain town. The village coffee house, as it had every morning for the past 50 years, awoke to another day of stories and encounters. However, this was no ordinary morning. Emily adjusted the flower arrangement on the main counter for the 3rd time, her slightly trembling hands betraying her anxiety. The coffee house was closed to regular customers, prepared for a special event that would mark another important chapter in this story of love and resilience. "Everything's perfect, Mom," Liam assured her, now almost as tall as her shoulders. The teenager had become a talented barista, proudly leading the 2nd training class at the training center. "Stop worrying." "Your son is right," Mrs. Clara agreed, emerging from the kitchen with a tray of freshly baked cheese bread. "Besides, you know he only has eyes for you, no matter how the decorations look." The he in question was William, who at that moment was probably as anxious as she was, getting ready at his house in the mountains. After 2 years of being together, sharing joys, challenges, and endless cups of coffee, they had decided to make their union official. And what place could be more fitting for the ceremony than the coffee shop where their story had begun? "Mom," Liam called softly, "can I show you something before the guests arrive?" Emily followed her son to the new wing of the coffee shop where the training center operated. On the main wall, a photo exhibition told the story of the establishment. Liam stopped in front of a particular photo, the first one they had taken together, the 3 of them, after that fateful day in the square. "Remember that day?" he asked, his eyes shining with the memory. "That's when I realized we'd be a real family." Emily hugged her son, feeling her heart overflow with love and gratitude. "And look at the amazing family we've become." The sound of cars arriving announced that the first guests were coming. The ceremony would be intimate, with only close friends and people who had played an important part in their journey. Even Richard, William's former business partner, had been invited. After cooperating with the authorities and serving his sentence, he had dedicated himself to social projects, finding redemption in volunteer work. "It's time," Mrs. Clara announced, her voice choked with emotion. I'll greet the guests. Liam, you know what to do." The young barista nodded, heading to the specialty coffee machine that had been installed just for the occasion. Each guest would be welcomed with a unique creation, specially developed for the moment. The next few minutes passed like a dream. Emily watched through the window of the office-turned-bridal room as the coffee shop filled with love and joy. The tables had been rearranged to create a central aisle, decorated with white flowers and golden coffee beans. "Can I come in?" a familiar voice called at the door. It was Sophia, the former secretary of Michael Anderson, who had become a great friend after helping them expose the fraud scheme. "I brought something for you." In her hands was an old wooden box, which Emily recognized immediately. It was where her grandmother had kept her most precious recipes. "We found it in the bank's archives," Sophia explained. "I thought you'd like to have it back today." Inside the box, along with the family recipes, there was a letter yellowed by time. The elegant handwriting of Mrs. Rose filled Emily's eyes with tears. "My dear granddaughter, if you are reading this letter, it means that the village coffee house lives on in your hands. I always knew you would be the perfect guardian, not just of the recipes, but of the spirit of this place. A coffee shop is not just a business, it's a safe harbor where stories meet, where hearts are warmed, and where love multiplies with every cup served. Always remember, the secret isn't just in the chosen beans or the water temperature. It's in the love we pour into every detail, in the way we welcome every person who walks through our door. Be happy, my girl, and always keep alive the flame of love that makes this coffee shop such a special place. With all my love, Grandma Rose." The emotion of the moment was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. It was Liam, impeccable in his suit under the barista apron. "Everyone's waiting," he announced with a smile. "Dad's nervous, but trying not to show it." Emily took a deep breath, tucking the letter close to her heart. When the doors of the coffee shop opened and she began her walk down the makeshift aisle, each step took her not just toward William, but toward a future she had never dared to dream of. The aroma of coffee filled the air, mingling with the scent of flowers and the soft notes of the music Liam had chosen. William waited for her by the main counter, where they had so often exchanged glances, smiles, and silent promises. "Welcome," the officiant began, "to this place where the aroma of coffee blends with the fragrance of love. We are here to celebrate not just the union of two people, but the strength of a family, built on the foundations of honesty, perseverance, and true love." As vows were exchanged, Liam served his special creation for the couple, 2 cappuccinos, decorated with a single design that completed itself when the cups were placed side by side, forming a perfect heart. "For a love that, like a good cup of coffee, grows stronger with time and warms the soul," William declared, his eyes locked on Emily's. "For a family that found its special flavor in the perfect blend of tradition and renewal," she replied, her voice filled with emotion. The village coffee house, a silent witness to so many stories over the years, seemed to glow on that special morning. The walls that had once seen moments of doubt and despair now echoed with laughter and applause. The place that had once been just a young widow's dream was now the perfect setting for new beginnings. As the sun began to set, painting the sky of Asheville in shades of pink and gold, the guests had already left, taking with them not just memories of a special celebration, but also the certainty that true love has the power to transform lives and rewrite destinies. The village coffee house would continue through the years to be much more than just a business. It would always stand as a living testament to how love, when nurtured with patience and watered daily with dedication, can blossom in the most unexpected places and transform lives in extraordinary ways. That night, after the celebration, Emily, William, and Liam stayed at the coffee shop, savoring the last moments of that special day. The boy prepared one last round of coffee for his family, showcasing all the skill and love he had learned over the years. "You know," he said as he served the cups with professional precision, "Grandma Rose was right. The secret isn't just in the coffee, it's in the stories we share, in the love we pour into every detail." William smiled, holding Emily close as he watched his son with pride. And to think it all started with a cup of special coffee and a cheese bread. "No," Emily gently corrected, her gaze sweeping across the space that held so many memories. It started with a dream. My grandmother's dream, which became my dream, and now it's our dream. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee hung in the air like a silent blessing, while outside, the town of Asheville prepared for another peaceful night among its mountains. The village coffee house would remain there, as it always had, ready to welcome. New stories, new loves, and new beginnings, one coffee bean at a time. Dear listeners, we hope the story of the village coffee house has warmed your hearts as much as a cup of Emily's special coffee. To continue this journey of emotions, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it here by clicking to your left. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. Every day we bring you unique stories that explore the complexity and beauty of life. Share your own stories of love and triumph in the comments. After all, each of us has a special story to tell. Until next time.